The Wild West is an era made famous by its many outlaws. Names like Billy the Kid, White Earp, and Calamity Jane are still remembered for their tales of robbery, gunfighting, and murder. One name that's often forgotten is Sam Bass. This Indiana orphan would go on to lead the Bass Gang, a posse of bandits that thought to perfect the art of train robbery. Let out that laugh. Let out that laugh. Bass treated thieving as a sport. This unbreakable addiction would later prompt the Bath War and Round Rock Shootout, where Texas Rangers and the Bath Gang face one another head to head. My name is Jake Storyella, and this is Last from Past.
Welcome to Laughs from the Past, Season
What'd you
8,
think of the intro?
Episode 3. Intro was really good. I was holding it together, but then when you hit robbery, so robber, it got me really good. And then once the valve broke, I'm sorry, I laughed through your delightful art.
It's okay. It's a little lisp kicked in there.
Yep. Two episodes in a row, you went a little lisp.
A little lispy.
Man, welcome to Laughs from the Past, Season 8, Episode 3, all about the Wild West. This episode is written by producer Luke, and it is all about Sam Bass. And Jake, the intro is correct. Like, Sam Bass is not remembered. Like, every other name, Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, Calamity Jane, Wild Bill Hickok, you know a lot of these names. Doc Holliday, Bat Masterson, even. Maybe you don't know that one, but Sam Bass. I've heard the name before, like when I read books, legendary outlaw Sam Bass, but I don't know his story at all. Are you familiar in the slightest?
I'm not too familiar with Sam Bass. Maybe I am. Interested in Texas Rangers stuff because that goes into my category of things you see in everyday life that you don't actually process. Like, why are the Texas Rangers actually named the Texas Rangers? And then it's kind of hilarious that it's after Wild Wild West stuff. But yeah, I mean, he classic tactical error in this. It's a little bit. No name.
Yeah, you gotta have
no name.
You gotta have a better name than Sam Bass.
It's your Babe Ruth argument. It's the LeBron James argument. It's why I'm a Zion Williamson believer. Like, yes, I mean Kobe Bryant. It's why it's just a multiplier if you have the great name. And I think Sam Bass just screwed up. I mean, what was Billy the Kid's real name?
I think like Dick Shot Honeywell.
No, see, then he would have went by Dick Shot Honeywell. But I mean, literally it opened names like Billy the Kid. Okay, cool. Wyatt Earp. Yup. And Calamity Jane. Like, Sam Bass cannot hang with that crew.
Henry McCarty was Billy the Kid's real name.
I mean, Henry McCarty would be remembered as Sam Bass.
Hold on. Here's something. Sam Bass plays in certain arenas. Like, if he's a fisherman, he's the best fisherman and he's going to be famous.
Right. He kind of went away from his self-fulfilling prophecy, one of your favorite things.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let's learn a little bit about Sam Bass. Are you ready to learn?
Sam Bass was born in Indiana. Oh, no, that's you.
Okay, Sam Bass was born in Indiana, as everyone who has ever heard the Ballad of Sam Bass knows. I've never heard that. Do we want to listen to that?
Might as well, right?
Okay, I'll try to bring it up. Born on a farm 2 miles from Mitchell, Indiana, July.
All the hot spots.
Yeah, he's been everywhere.
The Ballard of Sam Bass and Mitchell, just 2 miles from Mitchell, Indiana. What are these, producer Luke?
Mitchell, Indiana. You're not familiar with Mitchell, Indiana?
No, nobody is.
Me neither. I bet Sam Bass even ditched that place.
Yeah, he literally did.
Okay, so and he was born on July 21st, 1851. He was soon orphaned, and he and his brother and sisters moved to a nearby farm to live with their uncle and his 9 children. Holy smokes. That's crazy. That's a lot of kids for the uncle to bring in.
Olden times are nuts, man.
All right, you ready to listen to the Ballad of Sam Bass?
Sure.
Let's give this a listen. What if it gives away the entire story? Producer Luke's like, don't listen to it.
At Amazon.
No, this is a commercial for Amazon. And now we're giving... I'm going to mute that. Oh, and now another commercial's coming on for Seamless. Jeez, 2 commercials just to listen to the Sam Bass song.
Was born in Indiana, it was his native home. And at the age of 17, young Sam begun to roam. And he first come out to Texas, a cowboy for to be.
All right. I don't want to listen to that whole thing, but we get the idea. There's a song about Sam Bass. So he's orphaned. His uncle, who lives nearby, brings him in. Why was he orphaned? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm that uncle, unless the parents are dead, or they even have hardcore drug addicts back in the 1850s, like, you know what I'm saying? I got 9 kids. I'm not taking in year 3 unless something's really going on with Sam Bass's mom and dad.
It's an interesting detail that he was soon orphaned, because you think that detail would be important. Were they killed? Did they die?
Yeah. Did they just next all their sons? Like, nah.
Yeah, like, we're not into this. I'm going to assume they died, but it just seems like normally you would just say that.
As a child, Sam received no formal schooling, and he chose to strike out on his own in 1869. So was he 18 years old there? Sam traveled down the Mississippi to Rosedale, Mississippi, where he worked for a year in Charles Mill. It was here that Sam learned how to handle a pistol and honed his card playing skills. I mean, what kind of mill are we running here? Put the kid to work. In 1870, Sam met up with Scott Mays, a teamster, headed to Denton, Texas. See, I don't know who came up with the word teamster, but it's one of the coolest names that doesn't really match what it is. Like, when I grew up in a place in New Jersey, Jake, very huge teamster community of jobs. And I always thought, like, oh, he's a teamster. I thought that sounded so badass. And then I found out they just drove trucks.
I mean, what do
for a
you have
union.
as the definition of teamster?
It's a union person. Just a good union job.
Okay. Because, yeah, I have the definition of teamster. One is a truck driver, comma,
Yeah,
a
that's
member
what.
of a teamster union, including truck drivers, chauffeurs, and warehouse workers.
Yes, that's what all of my neighborhood was, and a lot of my neighborhood was in New Jersey. But they would just say he's a teamster, and that felt so much cooler than truck driver.
Right, but I'm previous to this, Jim, and I'll update you on history a little bit. Trucks didn't exist yet, so a teamster was doing what? They were horse and buggying. They were going on boats.
Yeah, I would guess it's a union job where they were transferring something.
Okay.
Well, Scott Mays was a teamster headed to Denton, Texas. Sam had always been taken with the idea of moving to Texas and becoming a cowboy. Who hasn't? And this looked like his chance. The two arrived in Denton, and Sam found employment with Sheriff W.F. Egan, who went by the nickname Dad.
Yep.
Sheriff W.F. Dad Egan.
Is this gentleman's picture we got here? Is that Sheriff Dad, or is that
No, that's Sam Bass. And
Okay.
here it is on the big screen. Anyone watching on the YouTube machine?
Nice Canadian Mountie hat.
Yeah, big ol' hat.
Got to fold. You either got to fold that up or fold that down.
Sun's not getting to him, Jake. That's for sure.
Nothing's getting to him.
It's a
Birds
good-
landed on him.
It's a good hat. It's a really, really good hat. So Sheriff Egan employed Sam not as a deputy, but as a farmhand. He curried the horses, milked the cows, cut firewood, but most importantly, Sam spent some time as a teamster. It was at this position that he became acquainted with the country and learned all the trails, back roads, and thickets, and he would later use to elude the Texas Rangers. So teamster seems like there's travel involved and he's going places. So I'm guessing it's just not trucks, but something similar.
Yeah, learning the terrain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
In Denton, Sam was considered to be a hard worker and was known for his thriftiness. It was here that he also met many of his friends, with whom he would later engage in unlawful activities. Saving his earnings, he was able to purchase a 15-hand mare, referred to as the Denton mare. 15 hands, wow.
Oh, yeah.
This racehorse was fast and soon earned Sam enough money for him to quit his job with Sheriff Egan and retire to a life of racehorsing, gambling, and saloon patronizing. After 1875, Sam never held a permanent job, living instead on his gambling proceeds and eventually on thieving. So 1875, how old is he there? 24?
Yeah, 24, 25. I've been to Denton, Texas. There's a fun fact.
Did you go to any
And
races?
I think you said race horsing instead of horse racing, which no comment. Just wanted to get involved.
This racehorse was fast. Horse racing, race horsing. Yeah, wow. Both words
Yeah.
are both different ways, so I was just going off each other.
Yeah, no, it was nice and it rolled pretty good, but it took me a second too, because I was like, does that still work? Because both words are still right, I think.
I'm going to count it,
Yeah.
and I'm not biased. So, kind of cool that he saved his money, bought a racehorse, and it was like an investment, and then just lived off the winnings from his racehorse for a while.
This
Seems
is
like it didn't last for a long time because he eventually had to get to thieving.
Yeah, I mean gambling. It's tough to get wealthy gambling, but yeah, man, this guy lived a little bit of an American dream, man. Yeah, fled town, moved to Mississippi. Got a teamster gig, and then bought himself a horse that he started racing and winning money. This is early American dream stuff.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him. Maybe it won't last. In December of 1875, when I said in December, it just reminded me of your Merrifield Lewis. December
December.
of 1875, Sam met Joel Collins in San Antonio. Together, they decided to run a herd of cattle to the northern markets. This eventually took them to Nebraska, where they sold the herd and used the money to take up gold prospecting in the back hills. Okay.
Joel Collins, huh?
Yeah, Joel Collins, that doesn't fit in this era. Like, that's too modern sounding of a name for me.
Joel Collins feels like a nice guy.
Yes, he feels like a good to-do, wholesome dude.
Joel Collins lives in your cul-de-sac, and you're like, yeah, I kind of like Joel.
You don't know him that well, but you're friendly. That's Joel Collins.
Yeah, you see him twice a year. Like, you guys do a neighborhood like beer swap, and then you see him one other time a year, and you're like, yeah, that Joel Collins is a nice cat.
Oh my God, Google image Joel Collins. It's a lot of this. Is this okay? Hold on. I think it actually is the same person. It's okay. So there's like 7 that are the same person, but it's just a lot of just goober white guys.
Yeah, there's one he's involved in Hollywood, so Joel Collins gets a lot of love. But yeah, a lot of friendly chaps that you're okay with, but you don't go to the next step to.
Yeah. And then the neighbors go, Joel got arrested? Joel Collins? That's the kind of guy we're talking about.
Okay.
So they decided to herd cattle in the northern markets. So I guess the racehorse didn't last long, but he's still doing.
By the way, I think something to circle, and it's the Joel Collins effect a little bit. Black Hill Bandits is a pretty good name, but I'm guessing that we're about to find out that the Black Hill Bandits weren't strong. Like, they couldn't hang in Sam Bass's realm, which if it was just the Black Hill Bandits, we would know them in history.
Yeah. The Black Hill Bandits is a great name.
Great name.
But yeah, they hold on. They eventually took them to Nebraska, where they sold the herd and used the money to take up gold prospecting in the Black Hills, like Deadwood area. But dude, that's like, I feel like that's the dumbest thing Sam's done. He's been pretty smart. Gave up everything to go prospect for gold. That's a fool's errand.
Hey man, at the time, gold was pretty cool.
Yeah, but anyone that went prospecting for it sucked.
He's a gambler.
Yeah, it's true.
You know that.
The Black Hills Bandits, as the gang was known, tired of the puny payoffs from the stage robberies, turned their attention to more lucrative crime of train robbing. That is the next step. I mean, stagecoach, train, right?
Minor league, AA, AAA, major league.
So train robberies. Their first train job took place at the Big Spring Station in Nebraska at 10:48 p.m. Clocks were at the ready to know the exact minute on September 18th, 1877, under a big moon. So, like, come on.
That moon was big that night.
I checked my pocket watch. It was 10:48 p.m. How'd you get it to pocket watch?
That's an important detail.
The bandits forced the station master to signal the coming express train to halt and then boarded.
I've got a kind of BS. I have a BS devil advocate question.
Yeah.
Do you think a big moon was important because it gave a little more light?
I'm guessing.
Okay.
I'm guessing that's the detail in there. You know, more moonshine.
Could they not have gotten it from a police report? I feel like that's what they write in there.
The exact time?
Well, like, detectives are super descriptive when they're writing it.
The big moon I'm fine with. The 10:48 p.m. I'm calling bullshit. Why don't you just say, you know?
I think that's what Luke's saying. Like, if a policeman writes you a ticket for something nowadays, they say, you know, kids were drinking at college party 10:48 p.m.
Yes, we have clocks everywhere now.
Right. Dude, the watch was probably the hottest thing in the world back then.
Yeah. They didn't have a phone.
You couldn't have a
number to
TV.
call.
You couldn't have a phone. You had a watch, bruh.
Yeah.
I thought it must have been 10:48 p.m. and the moon was full.
But then, yeah, you know, you're just judging one dude's watch. You know, it's not like they have the landline where you can call it up the phone. Remember that when we were kids, Jake? Luke doesn't even know that.
We've got a round time. It may not have been 10:48, but we got a time.
Luke, do you know that that's how you have to set your clocks in your house? You would call a phone number that was like 10:48. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So you'd call that number, and then you'd get your clocks in your house, and then be like, it is now 11 o'clock. You'd be like, okay, 11, and you set it. Probably like 50 plus years. That's what humans did to set the time in their house. Or there was but then TV stations also let you do it eventually.
Yeah, I feel like TV stations came along and had a clock on it too.
Yeah, but that was later as well. It's crazy. Their first, so they're robbing the trains. Where was I? Finding only 450 in the way safe, they brutally beat the express messenger with a pistol and attempt to force him to open the through safe. We had a time lock preventing it from being opened until the train reached its destination. Finding some wooden boxes.
Hey, time out.
Yeah.
We're talking about technology of the times a little bit. How cool is a time lock?
That is cool. So like, it's going to be a 2-hour
And
drive.
maybe that's a good way to tell the 10:48 p.m.
Could be. It's say it's a 2-hour trip. They set that. So, okay, this can't get open for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
The way safe and the through safe. It's interesting. Finding some wooden boxes, the bandits broke them open, revealing $60,000 worth of freshly minted $20 gold pieces headed from San Francisco Mint to an Eastern Bank. What a find.
Yeah, good snag.
It's a huge find. Good thing I was going to say bad that they beat that dude up.
One of them said, like, hey, should we check in these wooden boxes? And the other one said, no, dude, there's a giant safe right here. Let's focus on the safe. And he's like, I'm going to kick open this wooden box. And then it was like, oh, wow, nice.
So, you don't think the wooden boxes were in the safe? I thought they were in the safe.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. It never says they got into the through safe.
Yeah, they brutally beat the express messenger with a pistol in an attempt to force him to open the through safe. I thought that attempt was done. I was going to say good job on them for beating him up because it was worth it in the end.
I don't think so, because it closes that statement, which it had a time lock preventing it from being opened.
Yeah, I think that's why
And
they had to beat him up.
It just says an attempt. It never says they get in the safe.
Yeah. Well, just some wooden boxes on the ground. I guess like the safe was a decoy. I don't know. I think they got in the safe. I think they beat him up to get in.
I don't think so.
The bandits divided the gold coin 6 ways and then in pairs split up, each pair heading in a different direction. Joel Collins and his partner were shot and killed a week later. Damn.
Obviously.
He wasn't made out for it.
Yeah.
Another pair composed of James Berry and Nixon was split up and Berry was captured. Nixon, it is assumed, escaped with his share to Canada.
Nice.
Ain't that the classic tale? The third pair, Sam and Jack Davis, rode south in a 1-horse buggy. Their share of the haul stowed under the seat. All right.
Sure.
Do you think that Sam Bass shouldn't have split it with Joel Collins and Nixon? Like, clearly they sucked.
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that these, because I mean, we hear about all these robberies and stuff, and like for a lot of people, this was their plan. Like, let's be bandits. And so I was just going through my head. There's got to be some cool stories of badasses who were like the good guys. Like, there must have been some badass dudes that worked for the banks and fought off bandits every day as they're living.
Wide Earp.
Yeah. So that's kind of what was going through my head. And no, it was a 6-man job, Jim.
Yeah, but I'm saying once they get it, like, if you think Joel Collins is going to suck, just kill him yourself. Take all the money. We're murderers.
No. You call they're basically part of it because they get caught and captured and killed or whatever. And they just assume that those guys were the ones that did it and they spent all their money.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
So they don't even look for the other guys.
Not bad. At some point on their trip back to Texas, Sam and Jack Davis were joined by a company of soldiers and detectives who were searching for the train robbers. Sam and Jack Davis convinced these men that they were too searching for the bandits in hopes of receiving a large reward. Awesome.
That's just smart.
That's so cool. After 4 days, Sam and Jack Davis split from the other men and rode back to Denton. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Huge Sam and Jack Davis fans.
We'll help you boys look.
That's a great movie scene.
It's classic.
Once in Denton, Sam explained his newfound wealth from a strike he had made prospecting in the Black Hills. Lie, because he sucked at prospecting. But he did get some money.
It's a perfect excuse, man.
His money and good spirits attracted many people, some of whom would later become a part of the Sam Bass gang when he took to robbing trains in Texas. Now that's where we went wrong, Jake. You had the Black Hill Bandits. You knew what a good name was.
Yeah.
Then he got a little too into himself. the Sam Bass gang, that's got no ring to it.
Yeah.
That's not going down in history. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, your best hope there is going SBG and you get some cool shirts or signs or something, but
The
no, that's
SBG.
nothing.
Yeah, the SBG is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It is assumed that Sam would have reached Denton by late autumn. I love autumn. Yet, by February of 1878, Bass had begun to rob trains again. Why? How could he have spent $10,000 in less than 4 months? Many people have believed that there was no way that he could have spent the money, so they have speculated that Bass hid his gold. Stories abound of individuals searching for the Bass gold. One story places the hidden gold in a cave in East Mountain at Mineral Wells. Another legend speculates that Bass held on to his gold until he reached the Round Rock, until he headed to Round Rock to rob the bank, hiding the gold in a cave west of Prairie Dell near Big Blue Spring for safekeeping during the robbery. If anyone ever found the Bass gold, they never reported it. Since it is hard to imagine that Sam could have used up all of his gold before he started train robbing again, it lends credence to the story that Sam robbed for sport more than profit. Okay, a lot going on there. A lot of good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Here's what my brain was saying.
Okay.
If he's robbing trains again, why do people assume that means he spent all his money? Like, as far as I know, thieves and criminals don't rob to survive the second time. They rob because they realized, oh shit, I can just take other people's money. You know, all the great bank robbers, the first one maybe out of desperation. The second one's not because they spent all their money. It's because they realized they can do it again. So just to assume he lost or spent all his money is kind of weird to me.
I think that's what that whole paragraph is saying. It lends credence to the story that Sam robbed for sport more than profit.
Well, that's the very end, the whole middle section where we have people looking for the gold that he hid all over. I don't think he hid any gold.
I think that this well, it's one paragraph, but it's just separated by 2 pages on our end. But I think that final sentence is the close of that paragraph. So yeah, I mean people were also crazy bored, dude, and they thought there was a chance this guy hid gold. So they looked for it.
I don't think
nothing to do.
I know. I love it. I love the legends, and I love that people thought he hid it in the cave. I just don't believe. I just think that thought process between the mass public, he must have hid it if he robbed again, is like, what? Why?
I think they were just bored, and if there's a 10% chance that he did hide the gold, it's like, all right, we might as well look for it.
Yeah. Caves, though? That's so cool. How come there's never been a movie about all this? We've got a lot of cool. Has there? A lot of cool scenes. Not recently. I bet there's one in like John Wayne's day. But I mean, 1949. Yeah. So 1949.
Calamity Jane and Sam Bass. I mean, wasn't the Alamo movie like 1911 or some shit?
Yeah, but then they remade it in like 2005.
Let's see. Well, we're waiting for the remake. 1911 till 2005 would be 1949 to what? 2030, something like that. Not a math guy.
So they just someone make a Sam Bass movie because it's clearly cool. They make Wyatt like
Jim. It takes time. We're getting there.
Like we had a big influx of Wyatt Earp and Dodge City and Wild Bill Hickok and Deadwood type movies and shows in the late 90s, 2000s there. So I just need a Sam Bass movie. Please.
So it's like a 90 plus year separation.
One story places the hidden gold in a cave in East Mountain at Mineral Wells. They're just naming caves at that point.
Yeah.
So anyway, whatever the reason, the Sam Bass gang stood up the Texas Central train at Allen Station on February 22nd, 1879. This holdup netted the gang $1,300, and on March 18th, they again held up the Texas Central, this time at Hutchins. The Texas and Pacific Railroad was hit on April 4th at Eagle Ford and again on the 10th at Mesquite. Only the first robbery resulted in any significant payoff for the gang, and the style of these robberies was highly amateurish, prompting some observers to speculate that the robbers were either extremely nervous or drunk at the time of the holdup, due to the fact that during 2 of these holdups, the gang missed large stashes of money that had been hurriedly hidden by the express messengers. All right. So, yeah, I think that he kept that gold, was living off of it, and just got bored at night, drunk, and was like, let's do it again, guys. And then they went out and they didn't care because, I mean, he's got 20 grand in gold and he's netting $1,000 per train. Definitely seems like he was drunk and bored and not in need
Sam
of
robbed
money.
for sport more than profit.
Yeah, that's what I'm agreeing with.
Yeah.
During the time of these Texas train robberies, the Sam Bass gang was staffed by Frank Jackson, Seaborn Barnes. Seaborn? Do you think he was born on a boat?
That's got to be the best guess anyone would have.
I mean, that's really cool if that's the reason why he's called Seaborn. He got shot at one of the jobs. Throw up a picture of these guys on the screen. Where was I? Seaborn, Thomas Spotswood, Arkansas Johnson, got to be a nickname, Henry Underwood, Sam Pipes, that's a great name, and Albert Herndon. Bass and Barnes took place in all 4 of the robberies. Jackson participated in 3, Johnson in 2, and the others in 1. That's not as tight of a unit as I would say you need to be getting this stuff done. You can't have replacements every other time.
If you're trying to do this right, you want the same crew doing it.
After the Mesquite robbery, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, you're killing it.
After the Mesquite robbery, a cry of indignation went out from the people of North Texas. The governor decided that the time had come to call in the Texas Rangers to capture the bandits. Thus, the Bass War begun. You like the Bass War?
Not really.
Yeah, nothing's really doing anything for me here.
No.
Besides the Black Hill Bandits. That was badass.
Yeah.
All right. So the Bass War. 1878 was a time of political ill-ease in the state of Texas. Reconstruction had just ended and the state government was still weak. Citizens were deeply concerned about the presence of gangs of bandits in the state, and the demand for law and order was sounded. This concern resulted in political action. Many politicians campaigned on a platform of law and order and proposed that a modern peacekeeping force be formed. The Texas Rangers, sensing the threat to their organization implied in this, chose to respond by proving that they were still an effective deterrent to crime. They chose Bass to be their example, and they set out to capture him at any cost. The end result would either be the capture of Sam and the renewed faith and financial support of the Rangers, or the final dagger that leads Texans to abandon the Rangers in search of more effective justice. A lot at stake here, Jake. There's a ton at stake.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of the ESPN people hyping something up just to hype it, because I mean it's the Wild West, so at some point someone is gonna get Sam Bass, but I think depicting it like that, it makes for a better build up.
Well, the Rangers want to be the someone. Lots riding on that.
Yeah, but I mean, aren't they? I feel like at that time when the Texas Rangers are saying we're going to do everything we can to get this guy, I mean, you're accepting all applications, you're welcoming everyone in to get this dude.
Yeah, so if not the Rangers get him, bad news.
I'm saying you could be like, I'm sure these other ranger groups were trying to form, but the Texas Rangers were also welcoming people with open arms. So it's like, just join us.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that wanted the Rangers gone. So there's this whole nother section of Texans saying we need different law and order, and they're doing their own version that's different than the Rangers. I think there's competition.
Yep.
Jim was taken. Let's skip a paragraph. During the 4 months of the Bass War, the gang became the stuff of legend. They led the Rangers on long chases with narrow escapes. The gang, relying on Sam's thorough knowledge of the back trails and thickets learned during his days as a teamster, would suddenly surface in an area only to disappear at the first sign of trouble. The gang's success in avoiding capture can be ascribed to both the difficulties of the terrain and ineptness of their pursuers. In a desperate attempt to flush the gang out, the Rangers conducted a sweep of all residents suspected of harboring the bandits. This resulted in the arrest of both Jim Murphy and his father, Henderson. Jim was taken to Tyler to face charges of robbing the U.S. mails. Seeking immunity and with an interest in collecting the reward money, Jim agreed to rejoin the Bass Gang and betray Sam to the Rangers. Wow. Jim.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Jim Murphy. Dude, how come the Rangers don't know the back trails and the thickets? Like, that's your whole job, is to just walk around.
That's a big miss. And like, if our guy Sam Bass only learned that by being a teamster, like, add a teamster to your crew. Like,
yeah, if you're a Texas Rangers, like,
bit.
Fuck, this guy knows all his way around. The Rangers have to have scouts, and I'm not buying it. Otherwise, the Rangers are super inept.
But this is exactly what I'm saying. The Rangers' plan was, okay, so, hey, Jim Murphy, we got you. Either help us or go to jail. Okay, I'm a Ranger. Like, they...
Yeah. No, he's not a Ranger.
Rangers had a leg up.
Yeah, he's a double agent, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so he's working for the Rangers.
Yeah. It's a good move by the Rangers. Jim Murphy is the name of a kid that lived with me in one summer. Baseball player.
Popular name.
Hope he's doing well. The first clash of the Bass War occurred on April 29th at Cave Hollow. Cove Hollow. Not as cool as Cave. Never mind. I was going to give it credit for being cool. The Rangers, under the direction of Captain Lee Hall, were able to take the gang by surprise while they were resting at Jim Murphy's house. Oh, man. Sam, you can't have Jim join the gang and then take you right to his house. You got to be a little more,
Well, he was already a part of the gang.
Yeah, but then he quit and then he comes back. You got to know that his father got arrested. Like, do some due diligence here, Sam. So he takes him back to the Murphy house. Fleeing the Rangers, Bass was struck twice. Once in the cartridge belt and another in the stock of his rifle without injury. Does that mean struck by a bullet? He got shot twice? And they just hit his rifle and
struck twice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
As Sam, that's really lucky that the two bullets that hit him hit equipment he was wearing. As Sam left the scene, he was said to have uttered, "Hell, boys, they've hit me at last. Let's get out of here." Very punctual talker. Undaunted, Sam was soon flashing his stolen gold pieces around and living it up in North Texas towns. In June, a posse challenged the gang to a gunfight in which Arkansas Johnson was killed and Henry Underwood rode off, never to return to the gang. Now, with Jim Murphy looking to betray the gang to the Rangers, the gang decided to head to calmer areas in the southern part of the state. Hold up, Jake. Is the Sam Bass gang just a bunch of fucking idiots? How is Jim Murphy still part of the gang when he led you back to his house and there was Rangers inside of it?
He said they got ambushed, man.
Jeez. So I think
Come
we're
on.
dealing. Jim Murphy, good job, but we're dealing with some dumb people.
I mean, you get chased. These people are constantly getting chased. I think the experience at Jim Murphy's house was just like it. That's why he quote unquote utters those words. Like, they finally hit me. Time to move. Like this, they were going to get hit at some point. Getting chased this hard. It was a matter of time.
When you learn about like gangsters and stuff, you know, Al Capone and Wyatt Earp or Jesse James, like they were all paranoid, like
Sure.
constant paranoia, never trusted anyone. Sam Bass seems like the complete opposite. He's walking around towns, flashing his gold coins, just announcing his presence. Like, here we are. They're having gunfights in the middle of towns and killing their own and deserting
Wild
their own.
West.
This is why Sam Bass is not remembered with the others.
Ooh, disagree. We all know it's because of the name.
Now we get the Round Rock Shootout. At some point on their way to Round Rock, Jim Murphy was able to slip away from the gang and send off a letter to Major Jones of the Texas Rangers, indicating that the gang was proceeding to Round Rock with the intention of robbing the bank. Major Jones was surprised to hear that the gang was moving so far south. He immediately directed Rangers Dick Ware, Chris Connor, and George Harold to proceed to Round Rock and be on the lookout for any members of the Bass gang. He then rode to Round Rock with Deputy Sheriff Morris Moore, what a name, of Travis County. Morris Moore. So Sam, Frank Jackson, Seaborn Barnes, and Jim Judas Murphy arrived in Round Rock Sunday night, July 14th. Maybe they went into the town to case the bank and get a shave. Sam and Seaborn were for stealing some fresh horses and hitting the bank as soon as possible. Oh, so they wanted to do that. They were for stealing some fresh horses and hitting the bank as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Murphy, stalling for time, suggested that stealing horses would only raise suspicions and that they should rest their horses and rob the bank on Saturday. After discussion, the gang decided that the robbery would occur at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. Jim Murphy's the best double agent that's ever double agented. Or Sam Bass's criminal with the least guard.
Someone just scared the shit out of Jim Murphy, because why is he even still here? Like, you had chances to opt out at a certain point. Like, there were shootouts, there was other stuff. Like, Jim Murphy was by the balls.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like, Jim's leading the gang. How can Sam not even have a say in when they're going to rob and what they're going to do? It seems like he has no say in anything.
I mean, it's a democracy, man.
It's not a good way to be a criminal. On Friday the 19th, Sam, Frank, and Seaborn went into Newtown to case the bank one final time. Murphy had stayed behind in Old Town in the hopes of getting in contact with Major Jones. The bandits hitched their horses in the alley north of Georgetown Avenue at the corner of Lampasas. They then walked up the street to Copperell's General Store, located at the southeast corner of Mays and Georgetown Avenue. At the same time, Ranger Ware crossed the street from Highsmith's livery stable to the barber shop. He later recalled that he passed the bandits at this point without realizing who they were. As the bandits crossed over to Copperell's store, they were also observed by Morris Moore, a Travis County deputy sheriff, and Deputy Sheriff Grimes of Williamson County. Sheriff Grimes is a great name. So what's the scene here? They're all walking across town and you got a bunch of people staked out, like ready to go down. Sam Bass and his buddies have no idea what's happening. They're being watched from like every avenue, it seems like.
Yeah, it's kind of and that would be the fun part to see, is because when we see these Wild West scenes, normally it's two sides knowing they're going to battle. So you got the guy on the roof, you got the guy over here. I would wonder how good of an acting job those guys were doing, because in theory, they're supposed to be acting normal about town.
Yeah. sucks for the regular old townspeople. There's a war about to go down. There's crossing the street, going to general stores.
Got to stop the bad guys.
The one guy didn't even recognize them. Seems like a huge miss. Like,
It's a tough look.
yeah, that's why you're here, man, for these people.
Yeah.
Grimes indicated that he believed that one of the strangers, he had not yet realized that they were the Bass Gang, was wearing a pistol, which was supposedly against the law in Round Rock. He's just a sheriff. So he's not with the Rangers, and maybe the Rangers didn't inform him. So maybe that's a good job by Sheriff Grimes. And he's like, hey, those guys seem suspicious. And he was, correct. I thought everyone wore pistols, though.
Apparently against the law in Round Rock.
Wow. Another account mentioned that Grimes was concerned because he thought that Sam was wearing 2 pistols, which was one more than the law permitted in Round Rock. Oh, so you're allowed 1.
So maybe there we go, yeah.
Whatever the reason, Grimes decided to investigate the stranger's intentions. Walking up to the bandits who were purchasing tobacco in the store, Grimes asked Sam, "Do you have a pistol?" To which Sam is said to have answered, "Yes." But more important than what he said was that he, Frank, and Seaborn also opened fire on Grimes, killing him instantly. Jesus. That's what you get for being a good sheriff.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You've been getting pretty into the Bass game and how he's running things. These are still very bad guys, and they just jacked up Sheriff Grimes, who had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I think they're bad and dumb. The best criminals are smart, and they steer away from this stuff. These guys, it seems like they were just bad criminals. Grimes
Wild
never,
West, man, all
Grimes-
powerful.
Grimes never even had the opportunity to draw his gun. 6 bullet holes were found in his dead body. Damn. Moore, who had been waiting outside the door of Copperell's store, entered and opened fire on the bandits, shooting Bass through the hand. He was then shot in the chest, the bullet piercing his lung, and was forced to discontinue the chase. The shooting had attracted the attention of Ranger Ware, who was receiving a shave at the time. He ran to the street, his face still lathered, and for a time single-handedly fought the fleeing bandits. The firing had also attracted the attention of Major Jones, who was at the International and Great Northern Telegraph office at the time of the initial shooting. Meeting up with Ranger Ware, Jones fired what was considered to be his only shot as a Texas Ranger at the fleeing gang. The bandits returned the fire, missing Jones, but lodging a bullet in the stone wall behind him. Ware and Jones were also joined in the fight for a time by a one-armed man named Stubbs. Ooh, I got to pause there. One-armed man named Stubbs comes in?
It's a no-brainer.
This is a wild scene, huh, Jake?
Yes, and I think I've been in Old Town or New Town where this all went down, and it would have been cooler to know at the time. But I do remember driving through New Space Town and Old Space Town and laughing that those were 2 consecutive town names in Texas.
Those are good names.
Yeah.
What about the scene where the guy is getting a shave, hears it, and then runs out and fights him off still lathered up? Like, that is straight out of a movie.
I mean, I'm going to leave that one to you because that'd be normally a sticking point that you debate and say, how was this reported? But I'm all in on that.
Oh, no, that's reported. I mean, everyone in town could see that and say it firsthand.
Okay.
You could easily have firsthand source for that. I mean, it sounds very much like a movie. It's pretty cool. It's kind of funny that he was getting in a shave when all this went down, but great movie scene. Where was I? So they're all just, so did Jones, did Sam get shot?
In the hand.
All right, hold on.
That line was kind of tough because Sam Bass gets shot in the hand. Moore, who shot him in the hand, Moore gets shot in the chest.
Oh, okay, I get it. Also, Jake, I like the the International and Great Northern Telegraph office. People named their stores so grand. Like, how do you think that sent one message to like Canada or Mexico? International?
Probably not. But yeah, man. Hey, world's best cup of coffee. It worked then. It works now.
Jones fired over. So this dude Jones fires only one shot. I kind of can't wrap my head around this scene. I'm trying pretty hard. Like Sam gets shot in the hand, but he escapes. You did so many misses, you know? I mean, the shootout the OK Corral, they're like 6 feet apart and they all missed each other. It's just kind of wild to figure it out. Anyway, the one-armed guy named Stubbs, that's awesome. And Stubbs picked up Grimes' gun and opened fire on the bandits. By this time, the bandits had made their way back to the alley and were attempting to mount their horses. Ranger Harold and a local citizen named Connor shot at the gang with rifles. It was at this point that Ranger Harold believes he inflicted the mortal wound on Bass. Simultaneously, Seaborn Barnes fell dead with a bullet wound to the head. I was about to get on the Rangers.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like you had them dead to rights. You had the sheriff was there, the Rangers were there, they were just moseying around the general store, and you almost didn't do anything. But it seems like those last couple shots there.
Yeah, it seems like the plan all along should have been like funnel them to the horses.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that came too late in the operation.
Ooh. Maybe the big problem here, Jake, is that the Rangers did not tell Sheriff Grimes what was about to go on, because Sheriff Grimes kind of ruined their whole plan. If they would have told Sheriff Grimes, hey, we got these dudes in town, they're going to rob the bank, but don't worry, you can help us, then there's a unified front. But instead, they don't tell Sheriff Grimes. He just innocently is like, hey, man, you're wearing 2 pistols, bam, dead. And now the whole plan is ruined.
Do you know how much of a fool you're being?
Why?
You're going to tell Sheriff Grimes?
Oh, Sheriff Grimes is the best part.
He's going to blow the whole plan.
Stand-up guy.
Sheriff Grimes has always hated the Rangers, Jim.
Oh, I think I have him as very noble.
No. Grimes?
Yes.
Grimes.
Yeah. He does spend his whole life trying to erase the stigma that you're putting on him.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Full circle.
At the point of Seaborn's death and Sam's wounding, many witnesses attributed a great deal of gallantry to the young 20-year-old Frank Jackson. With Seaborn dead in front of him and his leader Bass injured, it is said that Frank coolly held the Rangers at bay with his gun as he helped Sam to his horse. Together, they made their escape from the firing citizens and Rangers. Another account of this event states that after Seaborn was killed, both Sam and Frank were able to mount their horses and had begun to ride off when Sam was hit by the bullet. Sam clasped onto his saddle horn, but was unable to stay on his horse and fell to the ground. It was at this point that Frank held the charging Rangers and citizens at bay with his gun as he helped Sam back onto the horse, and they rode off with Frank steadying Sam. Is that 2 different versions of the same exact story, basically?
Yes.
It was like some people think this happened and other people think this happened. It was the same story?
Yeah.
Okay. It's confusing me. Either way, they're giving Frank a lot of credit.
Yeah, Frank put up a good fight at some point. Everyone agrees on that.
As the bandits were fleeing through Old Town, Frank, concerned about gunfire, had the presence of mind to warn a little girl who was playing in a tree to get in the house. Frank's awesome.
Yeah.
Jim Murphy, you're still... Okay, Jim Murphy, who had stayed behind in Old Town during the shootout, reported that he saw Frank and Sam come up on the street on their way to camp, which was near the Round Rock Cemetery. So let me try and make heads and tails of this. Jim Murphy stayed behind, thank God, because if he stayed with the gang,
yeah,
he would weird me out.
Jim Murphy did his job.
So he's told them that he saw Frank and Sam come up on the street on their way to their camp. Sam was being held in the saddle by Frank while he put new bullets in his pistol. How did Jim Murphy see them arrive in the new town when he stayed back in the old one?
I think these are. I think we're hearing just different reports at this point.
Because that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, this is just Jim Murphy being, what, phobia, nervous. He thinks he's gonna get killed. He's just ratted on people, so he's schizophrenic right now.
Yeah. Hey, producer Luke, what are we missing here?
What are you confused about?
Well, it says in one sentence that Jim Murphy stayed back at the shootout, but then he also in the next sentence is reporting that he saw Frank and Sam arrive at the other
Jim,
town.
this went down in Newtown, and then Jim Murphy never went into Newtown. Jim stayed in Old Town. So the guys left and went back to.
They went to a town, had a shootout, then they came back to the town that Jim Murphy was in.
Makes so much sense.
You're there.
Awesome. We got there. Okay, here we go. I was very confused. The Old Town and Newtown, kind of tough names for the story. Jim Murphy would stay behind. So he sees them come up near the Round Rock Cemetery. Sam was being held in a saddle by Frank while he put new bullets in his pistol. The Williamson County Sun reported that after the bandits picked up their things at their camp, they turned up Georgetown Road, present-day Chisholm Trail Road, passing a Mrs. Tisdale's place. They then turned down a lane headed towards the woods. It was at this point that Sam indicated that he was in too much pain to continue. Sam insisted that Frank leave him here and try to save himself. Frank did not want to leave his friend, but he was eventually convinced to do so. Sam gave him all of his money, guns, ammunition, and his big bay horse, which was superior to Frank's. Frank left his horse with Sam and hid his saddle in the brush nearby. After a tearful farewell, Frank rode off. However, Frank did not abandon his friend, but camped nearby him. Oh, Frank's like winning every prize, this whole thing.
Frank's the good guy here, yeah.
Back in Round Rock, Jim Murphy went into Newtown and identified the body of Seaborn Barnes. I'm kind of over Jim Murphy. It's weirding me out.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what he's supposed to do. It just took way too long to do it.
Yeah.
Wild West.
Capture and death. No great effort was made to pursue the fleeing bandits due to the fear that Bass was supported by an army of outlaws who would seize on any pursuers. I don't think he was.
He wasn't. That's the next.
Yeah, of course, the truth was that the actual Sam Bass gang at this point was composed of only 4 individuals, one of whom was now dead, so now 3 individuals. That's how math works. And another having deserted the gang, so 2. Okay. Nonetheless, the previous successes of the gang and the hype surrounding them led people to fear that the gang was a great force that would pose a significant threat to any pursuers. Out of concern for their own safety, the Texas Rangers decided to call off the search for Bass until Saturday morning. 2 searchers, Tucker and Lane, spotted a man propped up against a tree, but assumed that he was only one of the railroad workers who were constructing the line of the Georgetown Railroad at the time. Tucker eventually went up to him, and Sam held up his hand and uttered, "I am Sam Bass, the man that has been wanted so long." At this time, the rest of the search party, including Jim Judas Murphy, appeared. Tucker felt that Bass should not see Murphy, so Murphy identified Sam while hiding behind a tree. Dude, I hate Murphy. Producer Luke says that he hopes that we're mad at him, but Murphy, I thought the only reason he was still hanging around them, Jake, was so he could be like, "It was me."
I mean, that's what I said when we were back even north. I think we were north of Denton or wherever we were. Like, Jim Murphy, yeah, you got caught. Okay, it's time to rat to save yourself. I mean, I get that. But But dude, like, it should have been a one and done. Like, give a location, they'll be here at this time, and then sign off. The fact he's still around is unbelievable.
Yeah, and then he's still around, but he doesn't want Bass to know it was him. It's like he caught feelings all of a sudden. Weird. Bass explained to the questioning Rangers that his wounds had forced him to stop near the spot he was currently at last night. Bass told them that Frank continued his retreat at his insistence. During the night, Sam mentioned that he had become extremely thirsty and had walked to Mr. Sherman's house in an attempt to get water. His bloody appearance, however, had frightened the family away. He then returned to where he was now and was eventually given some water by an old man. It has been suggested that Sam made much of this narrative up in order to protect Frank, who had chosen to stay behind to help his friend. The Rangers then put Sam in the back of a wagon and brought him back to Round Rock. So that was nice of him to protect Frank.
Yeah, Frank's a good guy.
There's a picture here of Sam's gun. What do you think about this? This is a tiny little gun.
Nice little pistoli.
Yeah, just think bigger. And a book about his life. Probably full of lies. When Major Jones learned of Bass's capture, he contacted the Attorney General in Austin, who then notified the state Democratic convention that was meeting at the time. The dying Sam was placed in a small shack located on the lot at the intersection of present-day Round Rock Avenue, Main Street, and Mays. Major Jones questioned Bass, but was unable to get any useful information about the other members of his gang. Bass's code of ethics was summed up by his sentiment. It is again, Jay, can you read this?
It is again my profession to blow on my pals. If a man knows anything, he ought to die with it in him.
Yeah, it's a weird way to say against. Again.
Yeah.
Referring to his unwillingness to cooperate with the Rangers, even though he knew he was going to die, Bass did confess that if I killed him, he is the first man I ever killed, about Sheriff Grimes. Didn't they say that he didn't even kill him earlier? It was his other guys?
There were 6 bullets.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to write in the notes. If I killed him, you guys shot him 6 times for asking if you had a gun.
Yeah. On Saturday, July 21st, 1878, the doctor told Sam that it would not be long. Sam supposedly said, "Let me go," and a few minutes later opened his eyes and exclaimed, "The world is bobbing around me." And then he died at 3:58 on his 27th birthday. John R. Bannister, the ranger who was assigned to guard the dying Bass, claimed that Sam's last words were actually, "This world is a bubble, trouble wherever you go." Probably a more fitting epitaph for Sam Bass's life. So what do you think his last words were, Jake? The world is bobbing around me, or the world is a bubble, trouble wherever you go?
I think it was just kind of a gurgling noise. I mean, the thing I'm more impressed with is that we've seen the development of the watch. We've got a time of death. We've got times of robbery. People were really getting into the time game back then, which is cool. I mean, time's a big step.
Time. Yeah. Time of death, 3:58. That I believe, because doctors are there recording that.
Sure.
Marking it down. The Rangers hoped to take Bass's body down to Austin in order to convince the Congress that he had finally been caught and to justify their worth as a law enforcement agency, being that the Congress was discussing the Rangers' appropriation at the time. That's kind of desperate. It's kind of pathetic. You bring a dead body all the way to Congress. This plan was axed due to the summer heat and the inability to locate ice in which to pack his body. Just bring a picture of the body. Why do you need to bring the body?
No, if you want to make a point, you bring the body.
It was decided to bury him in Round Rock Cemetery. His funeral procession consisted of 2 mules pulling a wagon with Sam's plain pine coffin, attended by 2 men to dig his grave. When the procession passed the house of J.W. Ledbetter, a Methodist minister, he joined in and conducted a Christian funeral ceremony for Sam. Mary Matson, a black woman who had been employed by Sam Bass to cook some meals earlier in the week, observed the funeral from a cotton patch. After the ceremony, she reported that a man on a bay horse, whom she recognized as Frank Jackson, came riding up from the north. He dismounted, stood there a moment, and with an anguished look, flung a clod upon the grave. What's that mean?
You know, when someone passes and you fling a clod on the grave.
Flung a clod.
Clod is a lump of earth clay.
So is he like storming off on his horse and the horse kicks up some earth and flings it onto the grave? No.
I think it's symbolic of Frank burying Sam, helping to bury Sam.
I get it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There are many accounts of what became of Frank Jackson after he left Round Rock. It is believed that he went to Denton for a few days, and other accounts say that he became a prosperous West Texas rancher. Ranger Ware claimed that he later saw him in the Arizona State Prison using the name of Downing. Still, others claim that he lived out his life on a ranch in New Mexico. Jim Judas Murphy spent the rest of his life in fear, worrying that one of Bass's friends was going to avenge Sam's betrayal by killing him. The following year, he killed himself by taking poison on June 7th. Holy smokes, Jim, you sad sack loser.
Well,
some have speculated that Murphy did not really kill himself, but was in fact killed by Jackson. But the truth will never be known. I love the story of like Sam Jackson going back to one of the caves. If I was to write this movie, Sam Jackson would go back to one of those. Frank Jackson would go back to one of those caves, get the gold, kill Jim Murphy, and then go live on a farm and by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a nice scene where he's holding the gun and he gives Jim the poison pill, and there's no words exchanged. Jim Murphy nods his head, takes the poison pill, and then he rides off, and he has a nice farm in Arizona.
Yep. It's nice. Aftermath. The legend grows. A few years after his death, Sam's sister had a tombstone erected on which was engraved the following epitaph. A brave man reposes in death here. Why was he not true? Fuck, I don't get that.
Sure.
Why was he not true? This monument has long since been chipped away by souvenir hunters and has now been replaced with a granite tombstone erected by the Sam Bass Sentinel Commission. Dude's got a Sentinel Commission? Centennial Commission?
Sure.
In death, Sam's legend grew, helped along by a song, The Ballad of Sam Bass, written by John Denton of Gainesville, Texas, was sung by many cowhands in an attempt to soothe the herd on stormy nights. Sam's fame spread to Great Britain in the late 1800s, culminating in a wax statue of Sam in Madame Tussauds Waxworks in London. Back in Round Rock, the Sam Bass legend was memorialized beginning in 1964 with the establishment of the Frontier Days celebration. However, the most convincing evidence that Sam Bass legend continues was the publication of yet another meticulously documented book on Sam, The Tenderfoot Bandits, by Paula Reed and Grover Ted Tate in 1988. So, I mean, that's a cooler name.
Yeah, I mean, that just shows how bad the name Sam Bass is, that they wrote a book on him and they labeled it something completely else.
Yeah.
Like, normally if you have the name of someone, like if it's Shaq or LeBron or whoever it is, Billy the Kid, you put that name in the title to grab them. They don't even mention it.
And we hadn't heard this term, the Tenderfoot Bandits. No. I'm going to Google it to see if it was, is it a post-mortem name? Because, yeah, they made up a better name. So the official book, the subtitle is called The Tenderfoot Bandits, Sam Bass and Joel Collins, Their Lives in Hard Times. So, yeah, they just made up a new name. Okay.
Yeah, Sam Bass does not sell. That's why he was popular in Britain, because Sam Bass is a great British name, but it's a terrible American name.
Wow. The Sam Bass shootout was no doubt a unifying event for the young town of Round Rock. It gave citizens something to identify with and gave the town something to distinguish itself. You can imagine someone responding to the statement, "I am from Round Rock," with, "Oh, the place where Sam Bass was killed." Today, Sam Bass is not as well known as he was in the past. However, the city maintains its historical legacy as evidenced by the street markers identifying the events in a celebrated shootout. That ends our tale of Sam Bass. And I got stuff to say. Am I allowed to say it? There's a reason he's not memorized. Now bring producer Luke back on so he can chat with us. Like, if you do the stories of Jesse James or Wild Bill Hickok, some famous gunfighters and robbers, they were like professionals. Like, if Sam Bass never finds that 60 grand train, no one knows him at all. He lucked into his first robbery and then got a reputation because he had a terrible gang. They all deserted him or left or were double agents. He had no awareness and he only killed like one guy. So he's like really an amateur. The whole story was amateurish when you compare it to the big gunfighters and bank robbers of the day. And
the people that he did kill, he did it foolishly. Like, he wasn't thinking ahead or like being strategic about it.
He wasn't a plan maker at all.
Yeah.
No, and I think, again, the biggest miss in all of this is the name Sam Bass and the name Frank Jackson, because Frank should be known. It shouldn't be a group. It should be him and Frank, but they didn't have electric nicknames. If it was him and Frank and everyone else got mentioned as a side piece, we'd be like, yep, that's a nice duo. But don't care because they have lame names. And yeah, I mean, were they a little drunk and a little young and a little less organized? Absolutely. But that was the Wild West. And I think the other factor that we're seeing here is that, as you mentioned, yes, he ran into some money in a robbery, which is huge and nice. But this whole Sam Bass story is built on one shootout in one town. And so I think it's a pretty epic shootout. Like you were saying, the guy pops out of the barber shop. He's getting shaved. We've got a couple sheriffs and deputies. We got the Texas Rangers. We got everything you want in that.
You got scene. Stubbs and Connor.
Stubbs pops in. I mean, that scene is the penultimate scene, if I know what that word means. And
that means
I think
second
that's
to last. That means second to last.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the money scene, and then you end it with them dying in the tree. So, yes.
I think there's a lot of good scenes for movies in this thing. It should be a movie. I mean, I just wrote it, right? They luck into that first one. They get a little in over their head, but Frank Jackson's he's like, the Robin who becomes the real hero by the end. And you do the money was actually hidden in the cave, and you do my ending, and you have a really good Western tale there.
I mean, to say you wrote it is a little, it's a little preachy.
I wrote the ending with him going back to the cave.
Yeah.
That part I wrote.
You wrote the cave part. Luke and I will give you that.
No one else had it.
Don't want it. That part of the movie sucks. It's the worst scene in the movie.
No, it's huge because you play the movie up like it didn't really happen, and all the people are fools that are looking for it, and they're laughing. Sam Bass and Frank are laughing like, ha, let them look. And then at the end, it's revealed, oh, they did hide a little in the cave. And the whole audience.
Yeah, I don't know. That part of the movie seems like it just blows. I'm kind of into the Western street fight stuff.
Well, obviously that's there too, man. This is the riding into the sunset scene, which every Western needs.
Right. That's for me. That's on a farm in Arizona.
Same, but he's got to get the money to build the farm. It's a great scene.
He's already got the money. Sam Bass gave it to him right before he died.
And Jim Murphy sucks. And
always.
Yeah, Sam Bass kind of stumbled his way into being a gang leader. He didn't have the material it takes to lead a gang. He should have named it after himself. Man. Yeah. He lets Jim Murphy in. He lets people desert. Jesse James having any of that shit. Besides, he eventually did
Is
like
this-
a deserter and they killed him. But that was way past the time.
How old did Jesse James live till?
30 maybe? But Jesse James had a long career of bank robbing and a lot of plans.
Jim, is that why he's not as remembered today? Because he wasn't on the same level as those other like more mastermindy outlaws?
In my mind, like Sam Bass wasn't masterminding anything. According to what we just heard. So I don't know all the books. How old was... So Jesse James was 34. Jesse James was also like in the Civil War. Him and his brother, the James Younger gang, and then they robbed. They were Robin Hood. They're robbing from the railroad and giving back to the... It's a much more organized.
No, I mean, and you're
operation.
comparing him to the cream de la cream. I mean, there's not everyone can be LeBron or MJ, and we've got those people. We've got Wyatt Earps and Jesse James, but to be Carmelo Anthony isn't awful, and I don't think Sam Bass should be discredited for that.
I have him more as a Jeremy Lin.
I mean, no. Otherwise, we wouldn't be tearing the tail.
Linsanity, man. I think that's what happened. He robbed one bank, got 60 grand. People thought he was something he wasn't.
SMH. You just lost. You just lost it for the John Boys today.
No. I'm not impressed with Sam Bass, but it's a good story. And he's got a nice mustache. I don't even think he killed a solo man. Maybe. They were robbing trains for $1,000.
That could be more impressive.
Like the other criminals would
When did
map
you get
out.
so blood hungry?
Oh,
Maybe that's Sam Bass.
What? Broke up.
Maybe that's Sam Bass's differentiator, that he wasn't a bloodthirsty killer.
That's what I'm saying. That's why he's not remembered as one of the biggest outlaws, because he wasn't. Kind of
Maybe
stumbled
he
into
should be remembered for that. Maybe we need to harp more on that.
He stumbled his way into outlaw life. Why did his parents give him up? That's,
Yeah.
orphaned right from the jump.
Soon orphaned. Okay.
What was that? And look at this. Look at this picture of him. Didn't we say he died at 27 years old?
Yeah.
So how old do you think he was in this picture? Like 26? Just
26, 27. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
peak Sam Bass.
He looks good there. He looks like he should have went into politics.
He's got the hard line, the big mustache. I don't know. I think he had it.
But he's still got like a lot of glimmer of hope and life in his eyes.
Nah, see, the eyes are sending me the opposite direction. The eyes are kind of creeping me out.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Look, what do you got in his eyes?
This looks like the wax statue. So dead.
You think that's the wax statue?
It looks like the wax statue that someone took a picture of and then tried to make it look like it was from the olden days.
Interesting. Could be right. Which one is he in this picture?
Far left. That hat. Same hat.
Oh,
from the
that
first
big ass
picture.
hat. So
The
do you think?
mustache was huge for him.
Is far right the way to go with the hat?
Yes. Always yes.
So do we think this guy, and sorry for people that are just listening on the podcast, this guy in the front left is Frank Jackson? Because that, to me, screams, I'm the leader of this gang.
See, I think that's what you'd like, but I think the two guys in back, I think that's Frank Jackson, and I think, again, we're getting led by children here.
The back right, that kid's 14 years old. That's probably that punk
Murphy.
bitch, Jim Murphy.
Yeah, none of these guys are actually anyone in the story, which kind of stinks.
They just took a picture together one day?
Yeah, it's like the Collins brothers or something who weren't mentioned in the story at all.
Picture day. We saw Collins, I think. That was the friendly neighbor.
The
Connor.
Collins was the dude who... Connor was the guy who killed Seaborn. Some good names, some bad names. This was Laughs from the Past. Thank you guys very much for listening. We appreciate you. See ya later.